Welcome to SHOWstudio. We're midway through our roundup panels discussing everything that happened this season, and we're going to be talking about Milan this morning. It's so interesting. About maybe just like 2 or 3 seasons ago, Milan was the roundup panel that no one really wanted to come and do, and everyone was like, very excited to talk about Prada and perhaps Fendi, but there wasn't that sort of excitement about all the different things that happen at a fashion week. There wasn't that sense of new designers, changing aesthetics, whereas I think now Milan is super, super exciting. From a sort of business structure point of view, you've got a lot of brands there who are doing sort of merging their men's and their women's, working in a different way. You've also aesthetically you've always had Prada as kind of a leading light, but now things like Gucci are super, super exciting. So there is lots to talk about in terms of Milan. And aptly, I've got some very smart people who can help me dissect what was going on. But before we dig in, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, starting with you, Rosanna.
Hi, I'm Rosanna Falconer, and I'm Business Director at Matthew Williamson.
I'm Paula Reid, and I'm a creative consultant.
I'm Verity Parker, I'm the fashion editor at British Vogue.
And I'm Mimma Viglezio, and I'm a consultant.
So, does everyone agree with my sort of thesis that it is sort of more exciting in Milan at the moment? Have you noticed this to somewhere like Vogue, that you're increasingly very excited to cover some of the houses that show in Italy and what have you? Do you feel like there is more enthusiasm?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of enthusiasm for the brands that kind of you've mentioned probably already. I think the Prada's is always exciting. Gucci's become such a spectacle that everybody, so-called hot ticket that everybody wants to be at. And then I think there's the houses that you can't sort of ignore. I think Max Mara this season was actually really gorgeous.
It was really amazing. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a safe bet, but it's sort of a silent sort of upcoming maybe for us. But
do you think a lot of it is that you use the word spectacle for Gucci, which I think is quite a good way of just like such a moment of sort of fashion theatre, and obviously this time it was men's and women's together. So that it was 120 looks, which is just crazy. Yeah, but totally, really felt like you were like, I was enjoying myself, so I wasn't like, but I was like, when is this going to stop?
Yeah.
And the set, the amazing sense of theatre. Do you think it has sort of invigorated? I think it's had an interesting effect, given all these conversations around the fashion show and what the show should be, to see something that is that theatrical is really exciting. I think it's kind of pushing other people to maybe be a bit more experimental.
100%.
Well, it's not just the hot ticket, it's the hot seller at the moment as well.
Yeah.
I mean, they're literally selling out, and it's incredibly expensive. And you go back to the showroom afterwards to see how those things are made, and it's almost couture level.
Yeah.
I mean, inside the jackets and the linings and the embroidery and the detail that's inside, you don't even see half of what's on the runway, even though at the end of those shows, I have to say, I do sometimes feel like I've been force-fed really rich cake.
And I think,
not my aesthetic,
but Paula,
it's
it's extremely expensive for those pieces, but where they're really smart is that if you buy a pair of trousers, they're less expensive than
for sure.
at Celine or at, they're like, I mean, I'm not saying it's cheap, but they're £500, £550.
But
so
also
they
the
managed to
the
do.
shoes and the bags
The shoes
are
aren't
doing
crazy.
fantastically well. I mean,
I don't know about the shoes price. It's not expensive, or it is expensive.
You can get a pair of loafers for like £400, and then the furry loafers are like £800, and then the more
a pair of heels for like £400 as well. I mean, if you want to buy into it, you see that's where people probably start.
But I don't think at the airport, it was funny because I was on the fashion flight. I think just about everybody.
Oh my god, were you on the same flight as my flight? I did think if it crashed, it was everyone.
No industry.
Jobs
I
for
had
everybody.
Jefferson Hack, Katie Grand, Alexa Chung, Robbie Spencer, Holly Shackleton from ID, Ben Reardon. It was literally if it had gone down, they would have just had to sort of restart. It was crazy. Everyone's trying not to make conversation.
Yeah, but I think just about everybody in the airport, and I was on a different flight, but equally
Rival
numerous
fashion flight.
big names. But and everybody's wearing Gucci shoes. Or carrying Gucci bag.
But I don't think that's just the fashion industry. I always say the thing about Gucci is my friends who are lawyers or work in the city and have the money to the disposable cash for luxury fashion, that's what they buy into as well, the accessories.
Yeah.
And they are, a lot of them, really quite easy to wear.
Yeah.
And what an achievement to be able to have done such an about turn and to be able to make yourself the must-have piece for every woman, not just the fashion women of fashion industry who get the the references and who might wear it in the more maximalist style.
Yeah.
Piled on top, on top, on top.
My litmus test is always the airport, where I spend too much time, and to see all the stores in Terminal 5 and which ones are actually busy.
Yeah.
And Gucci is jammed.
Yeah.
Totally
Yeah,
jammed.
in Monte
There are
Napoleone
others.
as well. In Monte Napoleone as well, they're all empty and Gucci
but you
stuff.
get a different kind of cross section of people, and it's interesting to see what stores are empty and what stores are buzzing.
Yeah.
Gucci always has a bunch of people in there.
Will it be able to maintain this level of excitement? I think it's really, I mean, obviously this show had a particular level of scrutiny because it was the men's and women's together, which, I mean, I'm interested to hear what you all think. I felt it worked really well because there isn't a separation of aesthetics. It didn't feel like a men's show sort of shoehorned into a women's show. It just felt like an Alessandro Michele Gucci show, and there happened to be boys and girls. But obviously there was increased sort of focus on it because of that. But will they be able to maintain this level of excitement, do you think?
I thought this was going to be the season that there would be a change, because it's been 2 years, and I was hugely relieved to see that it's still the same joyful fashion that is so energizing to see, and well, at least it is for me. Maybe not the rich cake for me. I love a bit of rich cake. And I think now everyone actually they understand Alessandro and understand he always says he loves all these multiple references, from literature to art to religion, and he also talks about how he kind of stockpiles everything at home, and he's a bit of a hoarder and he's a
I
collector.
can totally imagine. Can you imagine what his bedroom looks like?
I mean,
There's really amazing
at the
pictures of his
seams.
house online. I think it was like American Vogue or something shot his house, and it looks like one of his collections.
Amazing.
He's a fantastic storyteller, and actually there was a lot in there that was very Savile Row, British iconography. It was a lot.
There was a lot of subculture stuff in there
Yeah.
as well. It looked like he was looking at different kind of like different
King's
characters,
Road
different
homes.
fans. Yeah,
the
exactly.
70s, 80s, lots and lots of different touch points. But yeah, and I can eat rich cake forever, but sometimes I just need some spinach as well. Then I go to Jill Sander.
Or Max Mara, if you're in Milan.
Samara.
You're staying quiet, Mimma. What do you think of Gucci?
I don't think, I mean, everybody knows how much I love it. I don't think the excitement will disappear, because where he's a genius is that he gives something to everybody. So usually I repeat myself, if you dissect this collection, especially when you go in stores and you see it, you can dress minimal with a pair of Gucci extremely well cut trousers. I mean, of course, if you put it on like he does, or those amazing, very expensive gowns, they're not easy to wear. But the jerseys, the sweaters, and I don't think it's going to change at all. That's who he is, and that's the only thing.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more
I think
and more
it
and
does.
more.
I know, but it's not going to suddenly become something completely different. And when you said 100, I think it was 120 or 119 looks, men and women, I didn't see the difference between when it wasn't men and women and when it is men and women, because it's humanity on a stage. Who
And that's
cares?
how he talks about it
The
as well, isn't
gender,
it?
the
That's how he
it's
wants it to
just
be.
people.
Yeah, totally.
They could be old, young, men, women, whatever, and that's where I think it's spot on with the world today.
I think also the branding for Gucci is such an important thing. It's like they never lost the coolness of, wanting to wear Gucci 50 years ago to 20 years ago to now. It never went that out of fashion, even it was Frida before. Maybe we didn't want to wear it, but it was, it wasn't, it was
still
still a
had that
cool
casual
brand, and it was
Gucci.
still carrying, and it was still, so I think now that people sort of feel like even more enthused to buy it, like you said, they can still just go and buy their white shirt, and they probably did 10 years ago, and they probably haven't lost that customer.
Yeah.
Which I think is,
Very clever.
why they
Very
just appeal
true,
to
yeah.
so many people.
I think they're very clever at communicating to a younger audience as well, who might graduate up into buying. Well, it might start with a perfume or something, but then graduate into it. Like,
Oh, there's so many different categories as
Yeah,
well.
exactly.
They're massively up. Their jewellery category, for example, the accessories, the hats,
there's
all
just
of
so
it.
much product.
I mean, this is, but you'll remember, Mimma, I mean, this is just the genius of a brilliant CEO and,
Marco
and a
is-
brilliant...
He's the cleverest
creative
around, and he's
director.
always been. I mean, even when he was a Stella, I remember in the group, we knew he would be the one that eventually, when he was ready, would put at Gucci.
But it's
Wasn't
that
he
hot
like a
combination
management
of-
consultant before? Where did he?
No.
was
He
always in
started at
fashion?
Mandarino Duck.
Yeah.
He made his grades there, and then he came to the group, became CEO of Stella, and got along very well with Stella and helped the taking off of Stella. And then was put at Bottega, when Patrizio Di Marco was put at Gucci, and he did an incredible job. That probably you notice less, but I know that he did a great job. And then when the moment was ready, well, then he became the head of the fashion group at the group. And then one day they said, he's the man for Gucci now, that they needed to change completely. And actually, he had the guts to put someone who was unknown, but he's been there 15 years, Alessandro. He wasn't new. I mean, he was the one who knew the brand the best, and he had the guts to do it, and look at what happened. But he's really brilliant. That's why also he's not going to go down. He will know what to do.
The combination of the two is like Domenico De Sole and Tom Ford. I mean, it's that Midas touch, that amazing.
Or Angela Arendt and Christopher Bailey. I think the combination of the two, that's what makes a brand successful.
And it's not, it's very difficult for, as brilliant as a designer might be, without that backing, without that combination of talent, you can't, it just doesn't work.
Or when they don't get along well, it's a problem for the whole brand.
Exactly.
And what do we think of the effect that the sort of the Gucci look is having across fashion? Because I think for a long time, you know, that kind of Celine-esque minimal look has really, really dominated. And it was kind of, I know obviously Fashion Week you have your kind of more dressed up, street style-y people, but if you tended to look across the front row until quite recently, everyone would be in like navy trousers, Stan Smiths, a big jumper, and just suddenly that's changed. And this season I noticed that everyone was wearing sort of, silly Gucci shoes and quite fun things. And is this having a broader sort of knock-on effect? Like, you know, when you're putting together your shoots for Vogue, for example, are you thinking in more sort of maximal, glamorous, fantastical, whimsical terms? Does that kind of aesthetic feel more relevant again?
I think it feels relevant if it is your sort of interest. I think I'm such a minimalist, really, in the way that
I can't really imagine.
It's not really my. I mean, I don't actually shoot a lot of Gucci, although I completely love it. I do. I mean, I can look at it and enjoy it and, you know, appreciate it, but actually I don't, it doesn't really feature on my boards for shoots necessarily. I mean, it's also one of those tricky things to actually use sometimes, because it just doesn't, you know, unless that is your idea, you really need to pull it apart. But that's also the fun thing, that you can call in 2 looks and know that actually you could probably make 8 looks out of it, because you've got so much to work with, which is actually quite fun. But I think if it appeals to your natural aesthetic, then it's amazing, and if not, you sort of can appreciate it from afar.
No, very much so. Do you think what does everyone else think in terms of the broader effect across fashion? Do you think it's making people
I think it did. I saw it. I mean, I see it on the catwalks, but again, because it's not really the look itself, it's the freedom to do bonker looks and still be
cool.
Exactly. I think I mean, we were discussing this with Steven the other day. It was like, of course Miuccia is not influenced by Alessandro, but in a way she is. And it's not Alessandro influencing the top designer. Is he influencing the way we think about dressing?
Because everything has got
Don't
more
you think?
silly and jolly. Like if you look at like Prada and Mimma, there's more stuff. Like that sense of like
more is
clutter
more.
is
And I think you see it trickle down to the high street. So it's trickled down very quickly, and the embroidery that is still around this coming summer is just really dominant. And if it gives every woman an attitude and a confidence in the way she approaches dressing, and that's fantastic. And you know if you don't question yourself and is this cool or is it too much, I think if we all need a bit of joy, and this is certainly a year for it.
Joy is good. Yes, we need joy. But isn't a lot of this got to do with how Instagrammable? I mean, I think a huge amount of this is to do with social media.
But then it's interesting the way he does his shows. They're super hard to photograph. Like this was
Yeah,
inside,
through
like
plexiglass and
absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean the trend, not necessarily the show. But I think that kind of baroque dressing over the top. It's all a lot of it has got to be driven by.
Well, it's quite shouty, isn't it? You can't sort of avoid it.
It's very social media friendly, and I think I still see a hell of a lot of people at fashion shows wearing tracksuits and trainers. So,
I think it's interesting you talked about like joy, because one of the things that I found quite interesting with the shows, because they'd worked with Coco Capitan, the sort of photographer come artist, and she'd written these slogans on a lot of the pieces that were quite sort of angry or disengaged or urgent, like she was like, there's not much common sense is not so common, and lots of these kind of things. And it was quite interesting. I guess this just goes back to what I was saying about how good they are at tapping into a sort of a youth by using these different digital artists or different, social media people to communicate for them. So Coco's thing played out a lot on social media.
I think that's the Instagrammable part of the Gucci fashion, even more than the looks, the Coco Capitan slogans or,
all the rich detailing. I think that photographs beautifully.
It's not there for that, while the young artists are there for that.
I do see that, but I think if we're looking for something that people would, it has that kind of magpie effect that might go viral and be regrammed, that would be that. And this photo was everywhere.
I put a photo similar to that up on my Instagram, and it got like
the highest likes ever.
It got like over 1,000. I don't know who these people were. People must have been liking it and then
searching by a hashtag or something.
It was crazy.
There's so much to look at, and there's, God, if you are now recruiting models or casting models because of the number of Instagram followers they have, he who shouts loudest gets a front page. So I think that's where a lot of this maximalism is coming.
But then
from.
it's interesting that he's maintained. Obviously, Gucci is a big advertiser, so it can be really easy to be cynical and say, "Oh, everyone likes it because they buy a lot of advertising." But I do think it genuinely has a lot of critical acclaim, even though it's so sort of maximum. And it's interesting that he's managed to maintain that without people ever thinking of it as, because opposite thing at Dolce & Gabbana, where people are like.
But he's charming, he's charming, he's intelligent, he's intellectual, it's everything that goes with it, I think. He has a really lovely point of view. He's, I think he's appealing, and it is appealing. I think the whole package is there really to.
It has a lot of integrity.
It does. It's just how he dresses and how he That's what I like. I love to imagine him back when he was designing it when it was Frida Giannini was there, and I imagine him having a notebook that had loads of jewels on it and going into a meeting, and you have all of drawers of weird stuff in it,
closing it shut,
while designing a long black
No, Alessandra, no, you're not
exactly.
Take
he was doing accessories, but I think he had a lot that he needed to get out, and it didn't take him long to vomit it out. It's like. It's been inside for 13 years.
That's quite believable, then, isn't it? And it's all there.
It's all there.
So
at once, exactly.
So many ideas.
At once.
What did we? I mentioned Dolce, and I'm interested. What did you all make of Dolce? Because it was kind of with the men's show, they very much did a kind of social media star thing where they recruited all these influencers, and they did a kind of similar thing with this, but a lot of the people that were also sort of clients, so automotive clients or friends of the brand.
2 of our clients walked.
Oh really?
I saw them on Vogue Runway. I was like, oh.
You're like, what's going on?
And then I read your review, which was very astute. I loved your review.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I got in trouble, but that's but what do we make of this kind of?
Back to your point of whoever makes the most noise gets the front page. What a clever thing to do, and to, I think, not only tap into the feeling that a lot of people had, certainly outside the industry, that the models on the catwalk needed to represent a broader breadth,
real people?
Demographic circle of people. And yes, admittedly, recruiting Instagrammers who more often than not look like models or are even thinner than models sometimes. But they also recruited clients and haute couture clients, or people from Italian society, English society. So it wasn't, I think it would have been unoriginal if it was just tapping into basically Instagram models, which is what bloggers are.
They had these huge screens, you can't see them in the catwalk photos, they were either side of the catwalk, so you sit alongside and you're kind of in these tiered seats. So either side of these huge screens that were beaming the names of this kind of social media people that were in the show. But obviously they'd had to use stock photos of those people. So the aesthetics looked really weird because it would be a selfie, then it would go to a photo of one of the girls that was probably taken for another brand. This huge presentation, just their name, Sarah Snyder, and the picture would come up. And they kept malfunctioning, so the name would freeze, or you'd get the loading. It was it was just bizarre, and you would see that they really summed up their relationship with digital, where it's almost there, but not
bit clunky,
quite there, and not quite fitting.
But do you know what was amazing? The 117 models, friends, influencers, sons and daughters of famous people, clients, whatever. And each one of them had an outfit made for them. It was all very Dolce. They all looked amazing.
Yeah.
And they were all shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
And it was fitted to them.
Some of them were small, some of them were tall, some of them were larger, some of them were smaller, you know, lots and lots of different ethnicities, and every single one of those people looked fab.
Yeah.
They did look fab.
It was weird being there because it was quite long, firstly, because everyone kind of really took their time.
took
Yeah,
forever.
a lovely time.
It was like being at a school play.
It really was being like being at a school
Like,
play.
hi.
But I kept like oscillating between really loving it and just like letting go and be like, this is amazing, and absolutely hating it. Like really sort of polar emotions. Because there were some bits that were really, like some of the way those women were so proud to be wearing this stuff. It was kind of amazing.
Yeah, that's quite amazing.
And there was a funny bit where the baby came, so the toddler came out terrified,
bemused.
didn't know what was going on, but then on the way back down was really close to the front row, so started kind of like saying hi to them on the front row, and even like Anna Wintour was like, hello, it was really cute. So there were moments like that that were quite amusing.
I think the authenticity of it was also there. You know, it's like Dolce's version of doing what everybody else is trying to do. You know, the multicast, because I think this season especially, you know, with the multicasting, all different ages, you know, influencers, everybody being on the cover. And it really was like Dolce's time and their way to do it. So at least it's authentic. You know, so maybe it's not, you know, the coolest thing, but actually it was, again, it's believable. And I think that's half of it.
But it also did feel like a moment. It felt like whether this carries on, I think it is carrying on. I think we're in the middle of it, but it was a changing of the guard.
Yeah.
Because really, did the press need to be there? Debatable.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what you felt.
You know, did I have to, you know, invest my time? Debatable. Does it matter what I think? Debatable.
But that's what I was going to say, you know, it's true that it's, as you said rightly, that's what they've been doing all the time, but then this is Fashion Week and we're trying to do a job, so I don't know if it's the right content.
Does our job matter anymore, Mimma? That's the
well,
big
that's a
question.
good point.
Yeah.
Does our job matter anymore?
That's
But
a good point.
it doesn't matter to them. You know, they have a history of. They always ban journalists. They don't care about review. You know, that's what I.
They do. They ban journalists because they do care about reviews.
But they don't like us, and they're not taking any advice from anything that anyone's saying.
Yeah.
You know, everyone's been writing for years. They should maybe update the aesthetic. It doesn't. They don't. They're not going to change.
Because when they see their figures, they don't care.
Yeah, they don't care.
Exactly, but does the collection matter in itself?
But that's
they
why
say
it
so.
should
I think
be for them a public-facing
And if
event.
a journalist who doesn't have to sell clothes tells them they should change their aesthetic, but they're making their bottom line is looking very healthy.
Yeah.
Why the hell should they?
Exactly.
And you know, getting out of that show was a nightmare, and I happened to be sitting at the top of the little kid. Happened to be sitting at the top of the
That's me, mostly.
where the models come out, and the runway was mobbed by, of course, all the friends and the family.
Well,
and
people were whooping.
selfies,
It was like a
and
school
everybody
play.
selfieing like mad. So it was like a forest of cameras. So and many senior journalists just leaving at that point. Senior journalists who, like 5 years ago, would have been beating a path to get to the boys backstage, to get a comment or a line on a collection or something they can use. And you know, I saw most of them leaving, and it didn't matter.
It didn't matter, but it wasn't
really
for
didn't
them.
matter.
Do you know what I mean? It wasn't for them. It was for those, because that was also. I want to put this tactfully, but that was one of the things that was interesting is when you saw some of the women on the runway who are obviously clients, and the way their hair was done, they presented themselves. They are not someone that I would say that fashion would particularly embrace. Like maybe a lot of those senior editors would look down on them and say that they weren't fashion forward, that they had conservative taste or what have you. And exactly, and I kind of looked at them so proud to be in those clothes, and I thought those are the women that buy fashion. But for the women we're talking to, like, you know, if you look so much, especially in London, oh my gosh, like so much of the press is like this kind of acerbic, too cool for school. And I'm like, no one who lives that life can afford to buy any of these clothes, you know.
I'm sorry, that attitude, and the people with that attitude are circling the drain.
Yeah.
And that's where they belong. And that is, you know, it is joyful. We are in a moment of complete disruption and complete change.
Yeah.
And holding on to what we were all enjoying or living 10 years ago is totally pointless.
No, I totally agree.
Because the world has moved on.
Yeah.
What I
And
think
it's
is
so
in a
easy
few
to be
collections,
so snobby, isn't it?
what I felt in a few collections this season, including this one, I didn't see a new collection. I didn't even notice. So what I'm trying to say is that if we still need professionals understanding where fashion is going, all of these, including Chanel's Rocket, are taking over from newness. I mean, was there any newness? Haven't I seen this already? So I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but in some shows I was thinking, oh, maybe it's the clothes of last season that it's boiled up in a different way, but they didn't even.
It's how you think about newness. There's a really interesting thing with it. It's doing the rounds on like Instagram or Tumblr. Try and find it somewhere, Laura. It's like a silver dress, and basically everyone's putting a silver glittery dress, and everyone's putting it on Instagram because they did the exact same dress in like 1995, and they're like, it's literally exactly the same dress.
Oh no, yeah.
But then I'm like, that's new still.
But
it's
for
new
me,
to a
it's
new
not
audience.
that kind of newness I'm talking about. You're right about this, but what I'm trying to say is that it's the same clothes as last season.
It's like their greatest hits, practically.
So, but probably it's because people don't care about what season they're buying. They just care about creating their own look. That's what I'm. So
or
it's
having
not
something
wrong
from
or
that
right.
brand.
Yeah. Exactly. It's just I don't need the new color because there's everything. There's pink,
this is the notion
animal
of the
print,
powerful
there's minimal.
consumer. Yeah, it's the powerful consumer. She now is confident enough to,
And he.
if she wants, she or he wants to pile it on a la Gucci, great.
Yeah.
If you want to rewear your Dolce, fantastic. It's all about how you style it, and I think the customer's got so much more savvy of their own aesthetic, and they don't need to be dictated to so much anymore.
Yeah, but
This
the danger is
reminded
that you
me-
don't need to buy clothes, like Paula and I were discussing
Yeah, but then
before.
that's probably a
But
good
then
thing.
how
'cause there's so much
exciting.
clothes
Well,
in it.
true. And also how exciting, because I do think that there are still those moments, and I think everybody has it, when you see something on a catwalk and you have that, I have to have that moment, and it's not related to trend, it's just because it's utterly desirable and unique. And I think that's far more authentic than seeing something on a catwalk and thinking, I have to have that because that means I'm going to tap into monochrome next season.
Oh no, I completely agree with you. I completely
Which
agree
I
with you.
genuinely,
But
I
it
do
happens
think,
less
I
and
used
less
to
to
have
me.
that as a
Yeah.
teenager, I'd be like,
Exactly.
tick that box.
But I think that's what
No.
that dominated more, I think, during that minimal sort of stealth wealth era, where it was like you would need to update your wardrobe constantly, and you would maybe need like the whole thing when that, I always remember that like camel coat explosion, which wasn't about.
That's such a great metaphor.
It really was, but it wasn't about this idea of
that.
like recycling your old
great
camel coat. It was
image in
buying
my
a
head.
new Celine camel
Yeah.
coat. Whereas now I think this maximal thing, it is about, well, also when it's so much about looking like vintage clothing, it is about this idea of recycling bits from your wardrobe. And it, like I've said this so many times before, but like you can be a Gucci girl and not actually own any Gucci clothes.
Yeah,
like you just
absolutely.
make that look. And I think that is a really different idea to the whole, like that Celine kind of, where it's all about that perfect product, you know, and it's so recognisable, like those shoes with like the elastic, like you have to buy to have that look. You can't just have it, you know, you can't, it's not about
You could argue that you could wear your Celine trousers from 5 years ago, because I've got Celine trousers from Phoebe's like first collect, and now, you know.
Oh, I do.
You know, that's what I mean. It's like, you know, those
And I
coats
still
that
like
actually
them.
she does every season. The longer shirts that she definitely does every season. So I think it kind of applies to both.
I more mean that trend, that like minimal, when that like dominated the kind of the definitions of what was chic. I
What
felt
was
like it was
cool,
much
yeah.
more about investing in these key pieces,
Yeah.
and you kind of had to have. Whereas with this, it's like you can't really differentiate between all the difference. And
I think there's no hiding it. You know,
No.
it's like, you know, a really, really perfect pair of trousers. They kind of have to be expensive, and they have to be well cut, and the fabric has to be exquisite.
Yeah.
Maybe whereas actually, if you want to dress in that sort of maximalist way, you can wear like an old boho leopard print skirt and tie a chain belt around it from Beyond Retro and wear expensive shoes. Maybe it's easier
And
to
that's
kind of
fine.
forgive.
I think it is
Yeah.
easier. I agree with that.
And there's not a negative or a positive, you know what I mean? I think it's just kind
And
of
how
the...
great that you should buy something and still get pleasure out of wearing something that's
Totally.
5 years old. I mean,
Yeah.
if you spend a lot of money,
100%.
on something, you should
But
get
then
more
you've
than
done
a
for a while,
season
and then
out of it.
suddenly, I mean,
and you
I've got a
rediscover
few
it and love it
coats
again. Yeah.
that are amazing, and then you forget them for a while, and then suddenly like, oh,
Yeah.
and you wear it again and
Yeah.
again because
Or you think, shit, did I sell that thing? Yes, I did. Bollocks.
yeah, exactly, that happens
Did
to
I
me a lot.
resell that? Damn it.
Yeah. But churning through stuff all the time, there's
Yeah.
something really unappealing about that right now.
Yeah.
And,
I know. I totally agree.
you know, why shouldn't it last for a long time?
100%.
Well, also, when that stuff's that expensive, you want to think that you will be able to
Yeah,
wear
yeah,
it
yeah.
again and again and get it back out. And it is that idea of like the modern wardrobe, you know, building. A lot of designers talk about this backstage, and it kind of sounds like a bit of a kind of just like an easy thing to say, but they often say, I'd love for her to be able to mix this with pieces that she might have from last season, and I feel like that's actually kind of standing true now. What do we make of the new kid at Marnie, Francesco Rizzo? Because he's another sort of promoted from the salt mines person, was at Prada before.
But he was quite senior at Prada.
Very senior at Prada.
And quite a personality at Prada.
But it's really, really splitting opinion, this, because I think in some ways people will feel very upset that Consuelo left Marnie, it was her house, and there's upset over that. Other people see, like, a lot of people really liked his men's, a lot of the men's press really like that. So I noticed people that covered both were very, very excited. A lot of the women's, but quite a few members of the women's press were really sort of like about this collection. I just wondered what's everyone's take on sort of new Marnie? Mimma, what do you think? You just looked at me.
No, I absolutely love this collection, and I'm a little bit, I don't know how to explain this, but I always thought that Marnie and Prada didn't look alike, but belonged to the same kind of aesthetic or woman. Probably, I mean, like, some things you could sometimes not exactly know where they were standing. This even more. So that's my problem, you know. It's normal. He grew up in Prada and he has that aesthetic, and that's why I was chosen. I think he did a great job. I love what Consuelo Castiglione was doing. I thought it was becoming a little bit weird. This makes me go back to Marnie again, but it looks very much like Prada. I don't know if I explained what I wanted to say.
That was one thing that I did think, you know, with that kind of...
Really young, you said?
Really young, like...
Really?
Particularly the cut of the clothing. Like, with Marnie, I always think of these quite sort of like large shapes, and obviously it would be modelled by these very skinny young girls, but it always felt to me like slightly like an older woman's brand. Like, I know most high fashion is, but I thought of these amazing characters who I know who wear Marnie, who are maybe like... It's a personal thing, I just know women who are kind of, you know, like, not super old, but like over 50, who enjoy wearing Marnie, and this was like for a lot of these kind of dresses, particularly the strapless ones or the ones with these bra details, they were cut for like absolutely no bust whatsoever.
Well, I need to tell you that as a member of that category of women, because I am over 50, Marnie was becoming too like that, and it was very hard to look good in, you know, I don't need to hide everything. It doesn't mean that it's over. So what you think like younger, it's good for women like me, because
by the time I'm over 50, I'm going to be
you could still be 50 kilos and 50 years old, you know, and it was becoming too like that, and it wasn't flattering, and you don't want to look old.
So you think this has given it like an injection that it needed then?
Yeah,
is that what you're
I
saying?
think so.
I'm not sure that it's so much about an age thing. It's about when you connect with a customer and you build a customer base, and then you decide that you want to kind of refresh, which is a perfectly normal thing to do, to kind of re-energize a brand. You've got to be, it's such a balancing act. I mean, Alessandro Michele just like literally shut the door and opened another one. It's completely different, and that has worked incredibly well for them. But I know a lot of people, really good Marnie customers, who are literally not interested.
Oh, really?
Will be out the door.
And it was doing really well, Marnie.
Out the door. I hate to judge.
I've heard the same.
I hate to judge first collections. I think it's so unfair. It's like people judging on first magazine issues.
It's not enough time.
It's so horrendous, and you feel so exposed. And he is a talent. This looked like a nervous attempt for me. It wasn't the kind of assurance that I'm sure he'll achieve, or I kind of expect, because he is a talent.
Well, I think he's quite whimsical. Like even like the show notes, like they were completely bonkers. It was like a poem. I had no idea what was going on. I tried to find my way back, but
I hate poems and show notes.
It was just weird.
It was quite
I hate show notes in general.
So I think it's quite whimsical, which was quite pleasant when you like. I quite liked it in the venue, and it was all scaffoldy, and it was a bit, and it kind of worked, but then. I think pull it all apart, and I agree there was a slight sort of skittishness and nervousness about it. But
also, to do a rebrand as effectively as they've done at Gucci, you obviously need a lot of budget, but one thing that the CEO always underlines is it needs, the whole company needs to be briefed and on board and on brand from the get-go, and that's really, really tough to do. I don't think it's just about budget, and that kind of all-encompassing rebrand is hard to achieve. But
also, this wasn't struggling before, like Gucci.
Well, it was. Actually, it was. First of all, this is such a small
in terms
brand
of kudos,
compared to.
I think, which
Well,
I
but
know
you
isn't
know,
the same as sales.
yeah, but our owner wants money as well, and this
Yeah.
brand. I mean, I hated the way she was treated apparently, but this brand was struggling, and it has been struggling for a while.
See, I heard the
Gucci
complete
was
opposite.
struggling, but at a different level.
What did you hear?
What?
That it's not struggling. I think Marni was doing really well.
Financially.
Yes, 100%. That was my.
Yeah, that was your taking.
Yeah.
I have heard the same thing, and also it was like Gucci just had. It is a totally different thing because it's huge.
Yeah, it's a different
But
entity.
Gucci, I think, had just lost a kind of cachet and energy and a respect level that I think Marni had always had. No
Yeah.
one went to a Marni show and was like, oh, here again. Like,
Totally.
everyone liked it and respected it and thought it
I
was
know, but Gucci also, we see the figures because being public, they publish them so we could see what's going down 10% every season,
Yeah.
which
Right.
is not what you want
Yeah.
from your cash cow.
Yeah.
Marni, well, it's not private because the group is public, so we can see the figures. But I don't think it's because Russo and Castiglione thought that she was ousted, right?
Yeah, I
Was
heard,
it?
No, I don't know.
I heard there was just a
I think
clash.
it's. Yeah.
But you don't know. You don't know. I actually have no idea. It could be anything.
It's that thing of does the brand need a rebrand? Does it crave that? And from what you're saying, Marni, and from what you're saying, it certainly didn't.
It didn't.
didn't.
No, I think that's it. I think that's why everyone.
It just seemed a bit sudden. It was a bit sort of
it's
forced.
really
It was like,
sudden,
hang on,
exactly.
hang on.
Like everyone went to Alessandro's debut excited. His actual debut once he'd been announced. 'Cause
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
first debut
After the
was
pre-fall.
surprise.
Yeah, it was a surprise, yeah.
But no, I think people went eager for new, whereas people went for this missing the old, and so
I
he's in a
agree.
really tough position because, and I kind of wrote about this in the review. It's like, I mean, I think this was a fine. I liked this collection though. It wasn't a bad debut, but just no one was looking for a debut
I
under
know,
the name
but
of
that's when we
Marni,
have to
so-
separate us from buyer. I mean, people that go in and buy. I need to check on this, but I think it was struggling, but maybe I'm wrong.
But then it's like they're going to have to just slot this. They're not. I don't think there's going to be an attempt to sort of educate the consumer that Marni has changed. So
No.
this is just going to slot.
Which is then
into-
dangerous ground because it's like, so do you want to keep them or do you want to alienate them?
Yeah,
What do you,
exactly.
you know?
Like people, this is going to go and hang in a Marni store or a Marni concession that looks exactly the same as before, and then the customer might say,
Totally.
This is
And you just feel like
different,
they'll end up making a commercial collection then, which probably involves a lot of the previous pieces that shapes that people want, the the denim, the the really good trousers, the bags,
exactly.
probably the jewelry,
Well, he'd kept that he'd kept those kind
It's
of.
funny, I'm much more optimistic than you this time, but let's see.
I'm not. I think
It's
it'll be
interesting.
fun.
It's definitely
Yeah.
interesting.
He is
Yeah.
a talent. He is a talent.
It's
and I
almost
think
like he should stand alone. It would be so nice to have another brand.
Yeah,
Wouldn't it be lovely if
exactly.
somebody could finance him to have his,
To have
to
his
have
thing.
another label?
Yeah, I tell you what, it's starting to kind of feel a little bit like Groundhog Day, but not in a...
Like
maybe
what,
that's
sorry?
not Groundhog Day, but
Oh, yeah.
maybe not... that's not the right word. It's just this churn through personalities and
Yeah.
brands and who's
Who's
like, who's
where.
on next?
Yeah.
And who's on there now?
Well, look
Who's-
at Rodolfo Paglialunga at Jill
I know,
Sander.
that was just this morning,
Like,
right? I mean,
Well, but
What, has he gone?
Yeah.
gone.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
kidding.
No,
God.
I thought
Out.
Jill Sander was so nice.
It was
But
fabulous. to
everyone,
see.
everyone knew
Beautiful.
who was going to. The weirdest thing at the show.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, it was like really, really good. And then everyone sat down at the show, and
Oh, God,
one of
I
the
can't.
editors that I was sat next to, like intelligent senior journalist, was like, "Is this even still him, or is he gone yet?" Like it was so.
It's a bit
it made me
farcical,
realise
isn't
how
it? It's
people
like-
see
It
back,
is
like,
farcical. It's absolutely
It's like football
farcical.
managers.
I can't.
It's
It's like
treated
football
like him.
managers. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
But he's three, and he's another Prada
Yeah.
alumnus who was. I don't. To be honest, I think he's brilliant. I don't think it worked. I don't think it felt. I
I think it took a while for. He was another example of taking a while to get his feet.
But I
under
feel
him.
like
He
it was
did a
getting
brilliant
better.
job at
Yeah.
VMA.
Pre-fall was
He
really nice. I thought
getting-
this
it
was really
getting
nice,
Much better.
personally.
This was fantastic. It was a fantastic Jill Saunders show. I find this insanely irritating. It's actually starting to put me in a really bad mood.
Do you
I
mean,
know what
do
you
you mean the gossip about the changes or the
I
changes
just
in their
mean I just
frequency?
mean the frequency because you, and maybe this is my age talking, this is a generational thing, but I have been working with a Middle Eastern client and went to, I may have told the story on SHOWstudio, excuse me.
Tell it again.
But I mean, it was a real moment because, a lot of the purchasing power is coming out of the Middle East now. Those girls love fashion, and they love fashion with a capital FASHION. And it's fantastic to see them kind of enjoy it and to watch them shop. And I was at a press day in Dubai and had been having kind of discussion which had become quite lively about how to present brands on a website. And my kind of committed feeling was that we should actually present them with a kind of, and this is my journalistic thing coming out, that we should present them with a profile of designers that gives a kind of background, not a long thing to read, but ticks the SEO box and also kind of helps the customer kind of frame the background of the designer.
Right.
And also kind of helps a little bit to kind of say about this brand or this particular retailer.
Yeah, why you should.
Hey, we've spotted this talent, kind of lots of things. And the lady who I was talking to, she said, look at these customers, look at my customers. They really do not care who's designing it. They just want the piece.
Yeah.
And that was a real shock for me because I thought, God, aren't they interested to know that Anthony Vaccarello is replacing and that he had been picked up by Donatella Versace?
But inadvertently they sort of are, because they still make those designers, they're not interested in their name or them as an individual, it's still that eye that makes that, but then they might not like Saint Laurent if then, I don't know.
But they follow an aesthetic more than a name.
Well, sure, but then that individual is still the one supplying the aesthetic. It's still Alessandro's aesthetic, for example.
I can't really blame them, because when fashion was 60 years ago and there were 5 names, then they were them, They were, now there's so much people that don't work in fashion.
But then what does
how
that
can
do
they
for a brand?
keep up?
No, exactly. How can they keep up?
I think the problem is in houses is CEOs or the powers that be are perhaps aware of that kind of ennui towards like who's there and does the consumer actually care who the designer is. So there is a sense of, we can have these 2-year contracts, we can let people go after 2 or 3 years. But regardless of whether the customer cares about the name, it still does damage to your brand. Because your brand is
no consistency. And
Jill Sander is not in a good position. It doesn't feel like it's
not desirable.
No, it's not desirable. It's not like a cool brand. I don't think people are rushing to a Jill Sander show to see what's good. And if you think that has happened so fast, like it was a few years ago in the great scheme of life, that Raf Simons was there and it was the hottest ticket and it was absolutely incredible.
It was
and
fantastic.
You think that is from
but that's what I mean when I say people think they don't care who's there, but actually inadvertently they do.
They do, exactly.
Because with any brand, you build a relationship with, it's quite a personal relationship with the brand. And so you have expectations of it, and you know what you're going to go back there for, and it makes you feel good, and it makes you feel secure because you know what you're going to get. If you kind of go back and black has become white, it's like, what?
And if it doesn't have a creative director at the helm, then it's really just, it's nothing wrong with the high street, but it's really just a high street brand.
It's a retailer.
I
always say Zara is not a brand, it's a retailer.
Well, it's just because
it's
you've
a different
got to
thing.
have that magic. And I, as somebody who works for an own brand name, is that how an own name brand? Own brand name.
Sounds good.
They're fascinated with all the minutiae of Matthew's life and his likes and his dislikes and his aesthetic, whether it's in interiors or in fashion. And I think that's really, do you think that's really important?
And they know what they're going to him for, and he won't let them down.
No,
but the problem comes when I do think there's a really hard thing of designing under someone else's name who is still alive. Like that, it is really, really uncomfortable. And like, there's some people that I know, like there are, like someone like Charlie Porter. I don't even mind me saying it because he says it quite a lot. Like he just thinks it shouldn't be allowed. He was like, it is crazy. It's
very odd.
Have you heard all the changes with Helmut Lang that are happening and stuff? I'm like, oh my god! Like the real Helmut Lang is out there being like, what the fuck? Like, it's so weird. And I think this is also part of the problem with Jill Sander, and it's kind of a slightly similar issue of what's happening with money. Is it's like you have to be so tentative, and then it doesn't. The reason someone like Alessandro can be so bold is because Gucci is this kind of mega brand that's almost just an idea, in some. Whereas this is a person, an aesthetic that you're trying to. And I just think it's so tricky. It's so tricky.
Designing for a mega brand. Think of Stuart Vivers at Coach and how well he's doing, and it's just the pressure's off a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah. And also you can do things that are maybe a bit whimsical or are a bit commercial and not be seen to be undermining or dumbing anything down.
Yeah, oh God, I don't know. I wouldn't say the pressure's off because look at the horrible time that Frida had at the end of,
I know.
I mean, pressure is
true.
Pressure is huge. I mean, you've got shareholders who want growth every term, and then
uncomfortable.
I mean, just that personal.
But Mr. Gucci
of the
doesn't
man
have to do
looking
anything with it anymore. So you cannot call and say, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, you've got a platform because, you know, Gucci is one of those big tent names like Vogue. You know, there's this stuff that you don't have to prove,
Of course.
I guess, but the brilliant thing about, you know, the Gucci team is they are making incredible product, which is selling.
But do you not think that was slightly the problem with this gel scent? I do feel like there just wasn't anything that was sufficiently desirable. I think that was the problem.
This Jill Sanders?
You thought it was brilliant, really?
I thought it was a great Jill Sanders show. I thought there were some fabulous coats in there. I thought the tailoring
I thought
looked
the
really
beginning,
good.
the
I thought
opening
colour
looks, I thought
palette
were really
was
good.
Yeah,
great.
but then it went down the
Yeah,
drain.
I mean,
I
Which is
was
what
less
you bring
keen as it
home.
went on, but
It did take.
I think he had a very bad season last season when he did the kind of faux pleats please and that.
I don't even remember it.
They just did pleats please. It was super weird. Like
It
it
was
was
quite
like
strange.
pleats. And then everyone got really angry and wrote really angry reviews. I think it was just, but then I feel bad because I think he's a great designer and I loved his debut collection there. I thought it was brilliant. And then and fashion can just make or break people. Like I do think, you know, where will he'll get an amazing job, I'm sure, somewhere. Maybe it won't be as public a job. But it's
Designers
just
have become such commodities, though.
Yeah,
I mean, I
That's the
just wonder
problem.
if sitting in a boardroom, you know, and I've heard these conversations going on, and I find it really, I don't know, kind of naive in a way, that, you know, people who kind of look at bottom lines and ROIs and KPIs and all that kind of stuff think, oh, well, let's just ditch the designer and that's going to make the critical difference.
yeah.
And that is one
everybody's
thing that you
answerable,
can
aren't they?
do.
Not
But
just them.
everybody,
That's
it's
the,
an
yeah.
entire
And it's
team
not
that is
always
responsible.
what you should do to make
No,
it work. I mean,
no,
I've
no.
been sitting
Not
in those
at
places
all.
like you, and I remember once discussing about, I'm not going to mention the brand, and I was telling them, you guys have no idea about what this brand means. I mean, I grew up with the brand. It's not the way to treat it, but then there's some men that think they know better, and
Of
they're like, oh,
course.
shut up, you fashionista, you know, and
But it's sad.
the brand
Yes,
was
and
sold
Mimma, I'm sorry,
eventually
yeah.
for £1.
But it undermines
True. Appalling.
image as well, because if you think, you know, the reason when you have these long working relationships, it gives a chance for that person to then collaborate with other people and form meaningful long-term collaborations. And that's when you get these, like obviously working here with Nick Knight and thinking about, you know, that 10-year collaboration with Galliano at Dior. And it gives you time to build like a visual language that then pushes imagery forward and pushes the taste level forward. Whereas it's like, if you're doing 3 seasons or something, you can't even establish a language.
Nothing.
You don't want to establish a relationship. Like that is why that is actually why I think J.W. Anderson has been very clever, because he's done that so fast. He's just kind of got his photographer and what have you. But like, you don't have any time to sort of push anything. Like, yeah, but it's
Everything,
very sad.
it all takes time.
But
That
I
relationship does
think
take time.
J.W. Anderson is a good example because he took over Loewe that was really, it had been dying for 20 years. I mean, I'm pulling it a little bit, but it had such a great name and great potential, and yet it wasn't. So it was a little bit like when Phoebe took over Celine. She was free. It
But
could
when
be
it's done well,
her brand, and
it looks easy. That's the problem, is
That
that
is
when
the
they do it so implicitly well, it looks simple. And you
Exactly.
think, why doesn't
They do
everybody
it
do it
well,
like
they do it
Jonathan and
honestly.
You
Loewe?
look at this
Exactly.
and you're like, why didn't he do it like J.W. Anderson did it? It's
But
just
that's-
exactly
Yeah.
because
And it's not easy,
because
yeah.
they're able and it's not.
And it's
because they
genius,
are
really. It's the combination
superior.
of people, and it's their superiority, I think, with the talent and the skill and the.
And
the
Alessandro,
way that
same
they're
thing, you know, he
spoken
just
to as
did it
well.
and he knew
100%.
it was the right thing to do.
But he was allowed to do that. I think
Of
that's
course,
the thing.
that's
Yeah.
We have no idea what's going on behind this. That's the other thing to remember, like what pressure is being put
Honestly,
on him. And
Yeah.
a shareholder, when they see you are able to do it, like Jonathan Anderson did, they allow you to do it.
They
I mean,
believe
Mr.
you.
Arnault is not the hands-off man
Yeah.
that everybody thinks he is. He saw he could, and he let him do it,
Yeah.
and that's it. So, you know, he's brilliant, Jonathan Anderson. Like it or not, he is brilliant, and Alessandro is brilliant, and Phoebe is brilliant. Maybe Luca is. I don't know.
But I think it's so hard because, yeah, maybe, but then it's also, I just think it's timing, it's opportunity,
Yeah.
it's everything.
And it is that combination. He also has a very strong CEO in Lisa Montague. You know, she's a fantastic woman.
Yeah, I don't know her at all.
She's great. So, you know, again, it's that combination of talent
Yeah.
and the team.
It is
that
the combination.
really important.
This is crazy, we haven't talked about Prada. This is a Milan, I know!
And that really says
So
something.
that says something about
Sacrilege.
how Milan is changing, that
How
there's
it's
so
moved
much
on.
to talk about. One thing that we also haven't spoken about, which I think a lot of, I mean, this collection, she doesn't often do a press release, so when she does do a press release, you know that she has something to say. And
This
it
one
wasn't
was
like
brilliant.
an on-the-chair press release, it was like she did these posters on the walls that talked about how this collection was about women and the roles that women have played in sort of society and their contribution to culture and politics and society and what have you. There was a lot of that going on in Milan. Like Missoni did the pussy hats that they put on the chair, and then there was a lot. I mean, there were also really much subtler, really amazing things, like the fact that Max Mara cast the model that wore the hijab. Oh, I've got her name. She's called Halima Aden, and she looked incredible. And that was really. Oh, why are you on my Instagram? That's weird. What are you doing? What are you doing, Laura? What are you finding? But yeah, here we go. This is the Prada poster. I was like, where are you going with this? But I think it was interesting that, in a city that is not particularly known for engaging so much with sort of fashion and politics, that Milan had such sort of punch and such an interest in that. I mean, obviously for Miuccia Prada, who was like, lots been spoken about her sort of communist leanings and what have you. So it felt very on brand for her.
She was a fully signed up member.
Yeah, she was. Wasn't she like the party secretary?
I don't know what her rank
she was very
was.
Something like that.
Yeah.
What did we think of the collection?
Loved it.
Did you?
Amazing.
Yeah, loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was like
One of the best Prada we've seen in.
I agree.
Yeah.
Miuccia at her best.
Why is Prada having difficulties, do we think? Because obviously, is it down to a bit like, insufficient product in terms of, we're talking about with Gucci, there's so much. What is it about Prada that's just not quite clicking in these times?
They probably should start putting in stores the things that we see on catwalks instead of only, black trousers. I mean, again, there's a little bit more than that, but you cannot find this stuff.
Well, it's in very small runs when it is there, I think. It's sort of,
I wonder if it's because it became quite, for me, and I'm in the industry, it became quite hard to understand. I think I have a huge amount of respect for Miuccia, and I love the way that you had to really think about it and absorb it and muse over the images, and that's why I think actually I always cite Prada as the prime example of where see now, buy now just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Actually, this is probably one of the first collections I've seen with instant desirability, where I think, actually that red cocktail dress that just makes your body look banging. That has instant appeal.
See, I'm the opposite. I'm like, I want that corduroy blazer.
I know, me
that
too.
first look.
Me
I'm like,
too.
I want
I
that
want
tobacco
look number one.
corduroy blazer.
Don't you?
Yeah,
I want look number
amazing.
one.
Yeah. Totally.
I'm with you.
But I think maybe that is a change that needed to be addressed. And I haven't had that with Prada since the pleated skirt with the lips on in the early noughties.
See, I always find it desirable. I think there's something about Prada that, this sounds very basic, but the price point is phenomenally high on the ready-to-wear. It really is incredibly expensive.
Yeah, no, totally.
And like I said, that is a very basic point, but I think it does make a difference.
It does, yeah. I do hear what you're saying there, because I think there is this thing where there's all these conversations about her that she makes things that you don't know what you want until you see them, and she makes things that, play with the eye, and people have talked about how she even takes things that she hates and then explores them, like when she did the golf collection and what have you. So I do think it's showing you something that you will want in 6 months' time.
Yeah,
that's
100%.
how,
I'm so forward thinking.
Yeah, so forward thinking. And if your studio is running on that sense of, predicting what people's taste levels should and could be, how are you then going to profit in a time which is all about making something people are going to like immediately? It's like, I do think, she's someone who pushes fashion forward, and she goes somewhere and other people kind of catch up.
But it's a funny, again, there's that kind of like, almost like a right brain, left brain combination in that company, where she has this incredible creative vision. And for years, my kids used to joke to me and say, that's mummy's Miuccia money. There was always, every season,
Miuccia money.
There was always a bit of Miuccia money. And sometimes it was more and sometimes it was less, but there was always something. And then they had this kind of commercial plan, which is, Mr. Bertelli's vision, which was this massive expansion into China, massive expansion on the kind of commercial accessories, which frankly, really boring. And there was something there was a disconnect, and it just seemed to kind of fracture, and that showed up in the figures massively.
Yeah,
but they've had so many runs at trying to kind of launch on the stock market, and they haven't managed to.
And also just so slow with e-com and things like just
exactly, because that massive expansion was the problem of all the other big ones, except that they were faster in adapting to the new ways, the e-commerce, the digital era, and Miuccia was a little bit
Oh, she's really done
probably
well,
putting a break on that. And then now she's got the competition of Gucci, which is complete rebirth. And you know,
But
it's
a lot
always
of the
been very niche.
projects that
It's
Gucci-
always been smaller
Yeah.
than them, you know, even if it's a 1 billion brand, it's not a 6 billion brand.
Yeah.
So
But then
it's
if you
just
think the
bang
projects
in the
that
middle.
Gucci are doing would work so well for Prada, like Gucci doing all these interesting things with like illustrators or digital artists and all this kind of intellectually type stuff, which obviously is done with their product and their aesthetic, so feeds into Alessandro's vision. But you think, why aren't Prada doing interesting stuff? Like that? I mean, they do interesting things with film, to be fair, but there isn't that. It's not enough. It feels like, you know,
But their films are very intellectual. They're not for everybody. Again, you know, they're very niche, and they're not doing that bad. I mean, they're just not growing.
But then it's a different kind of energy.
And also, maybe
You know,
she's
Alison,
okay
you
with
know,
that, or
Alison,
maybe they're
yeah.
okay with that.
Yeah,
She's not a
she's
greedy, you know,
lovely
it's not that kind of
talent.
hardcore business kind of aesthetic, is it?
And
Where it's
she's,
sort of.
you know, she's the Prada Fondazione in Milan is
that's
a
what I mean.
really inspiring place.
Oh my God, it's
But maybe that's enough for that. You know,
some
maybe
of her
that's.
energy has gone there.
It's
Totally.
incredible.
And Alessandro has just started at Gucci, so
Yeah.
he is, as you say, you
Yeah.
know, his bottom drawer has been
Yeah,
bursting
yeah,
with
yeah.
ideas. He's got
Yeah.
That
but,
fresh.
you know, she's certainly can
She's
pull it
still
out of
the
bag.
biggest
They're not in
innovator.
trouble.
The
They're not
biggest
growing.
innovator.
And it's, you know, but they never managed to become public. You know, they pulled the plug so many times.
Maybe it's a good
But
thing.
maybe she actually looked at Alessandro, and I wonder if it ever crossed her mind, oh my God, he's jumping into my shoes, because there are many aspects of Alessandro's handwriting
I'm convinced about this.
that are very Miu.
Oh, it's so Mimi. Yeah, I do
you know,
agree with
it's
that.
I'm
yeah.
convinced about this.
Yeah.
So maybe this is a bit of healthy competition.
Yeah.
I would love to know what she thinks about, like what she really thinks about everything. Like what she like. Does she look at J.W. Anderson? What does she think of him? Does she look at
it's
Senile
so
by
true.
now?
I'm
What does
sure she does.
What does she think of Gigi Hadid, Tommy Hilfiger? Like, just want to get the whole scoop.
I like to think she's oblivious about some things.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That sort of retain that kind of.
But I think she would. I think she's probably all-knowing, but would pretend to be oblivious.
Yeah,
Like, I did
100%.
have that.
And I read an interview recently in Italian, I don't remember where she was talking about by now, and you know, and she's very dismissive but in a clever, military way, you know. And did you notice she came out with the corduroy suit that
Yeah,
we wore?
exactly. Of course.
I love
that's
seeing what
did.
she wears.
She looked
Yeah.
amazing.
She's always
They
wearing
had
the
the best
best
canapes. I put them on my Instagram.
Really?
They always have the best canapes. So when you go in, oh my God, no,
At
they do.
least they have canapes.
It really it tells you.
There's a whole long line
It's
of
not
them.
like the best tasting. Often they really actually taste quite foul. It's more like they are like
They look
fashion canapé, and they're really weird.
Yeah.
Like backstage at this show, it was like a hunk of bread with a big slab of dark chocolate on
Chocolate.
it.
Oh yeah, I
That
saw
was it.
that.
It was the chicest thing I've ever seen in my life, and it tasted really weird.
It's almost like mocking you. It's like you'll eat this just because it's Prada.
yeah, but you know what I mean. And it was like,
But that's mutual, you know,
it is
class,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and when you
yeah.
go to the Fondazione, that's exactly it,
Yeah.
because the building, it looks a little bit fussy, but then it's
That's
incredible.
that thing of
Yeah.
Prada can do it, but no one else can. You know, you
course.
intellectualize it. Like there, that was really chic and amazing.
That's what I mean.
If I
It's
did
like-
that in my kitchen,
Yeah,
if I
but
was
like,
like,
what's-
welcome to Lou's
what, Lou?
house,
Yeah.
people would be like, what the hell's
I know,
What's
but
that?
Okay,
Yeah.
this, you have absolutely encapsulated the power of a good brand then.
Yeah.
The human being and heart and soul behind it.
Of course.
Yeah.
So she can, because it comes from her and it is honestly felt.
Authentic as well.
And she communicates with a kind of authenticity and with a sincerity.
Yeah.
That when you try and pretend to go to Lou's house and she puts just a bit of chocolate on a hunk of bread.
Yeah, it's
Well,
not
you'll
you.
do other things, darling, which you can't do, I'm sure.
Yes, I will. Yes, I
She
will.
can't wear red lipstick like you can.
Thank you. Feeling good about myself now. I am going to try that canapé thing though. I'm really going to try.
Don't.
There's a few people we haven't talked about. We didn't talk about Fendi. I actually thought that was a really strong, beautiful show. Bottega did a men's and women's show together. Did you like Bottega?
I could buy every single piece I've turned
Yeah, I
into
loved
a
it too.
Bottega woman.
I didn't
like
think
Bottega.
I didn't think Bottega worked so well with the men's and
loved
women's together.
Yeah, they were like the same family.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
very
I
chic, very...
I wasn't mad on. I hate a bow tie. I just thought it was like it felt too costumey. I don't know. But everyone else liked it. You really liked
Loved
it.
it.
Did
yeah.
you?
And also going back to see the pieces in there, hanging on a rail.
They're always exquisite Bottegas.
That
Really?
cape is my
Fabrications and
last
yeah.
Unbelievable.
little desire next season.
No, I love
Probably
it, and
cost
I love
£5,000.
when he does like a great 40s dress.
Yeah,
It's super amazing. I really like the women's. I think it was more to do with the gelling of the. I think also because I cover men's and women's, you are really sensitive to or you're more excited by a show that brings men and women's together because I just didn't feel. I've always loved the Bottega men's shows.
Me too.
And I felt like it was the men's that suffered the most in this. It felt like it was kind of shoehorned in. It just didn't work quite as well. I didn't feel, but
it's funny for me. The only thing is that I don't. If they want to do men and women together, I don't understand why there's like women's sections and men's sections. Just mix them.
yeah,
That would make it work better. Like you don't need to do 10 women and then 10 men and then 5 women, because then it becomes detached.
But then Gucci did that, but you didn't notice because the aesthetic worked.
Yeah, but
And you
because
couldn't see
Gucci
their
don't even
faces.
realize
You
if it's
see,
a
like,
man or a woman, you know. You don't even see. It's a totally different.
But it just
I
kind of,
think especially in here, they should come out in a different order. I don't know, but I'm not a stylist, so
my pet peeve is
maybe
when they send
Verity
them out together,
thinking
like, oh, a
Holding
couple.
hands, yeah.
Hate that. I'm like, no thanks.
Yeah,
No, not for
it's
me.
quite old school.
Is there anything else that we should have talked about that we haven't talked about? Missoni,
The
did you?
Missoni moment.
I did like the
loved
Missoni
it.
moment.
I mean,
What was-
I do love that brand too.
But also, I think it just, again, you were talking about authenticity and sort of integrity when you're talking about Prada. I think the good thing with this is it just felt really. I think if a lot of other people had tried to do this kind of big speech at their show and talk about like solidarity, it just would have felt really
she felt
cynical.
it. She
But she
really
felt
felt
it.
it.
but that's the Missoni family.
It's a family
way.
yeah. No, I think so that felt right because it is easy to roll your eyes at those kind of things.
But I don't like their fashion though.
You can.
You don't
I
like
just don't like the
I
collection.
thought this was
I
a
like
great
it.
I never
Missoni
do.
collection.
I love them, but I can't bring myself to
But it's such
absolutely
an aesthetic, isn't it? You either love it or...
But I think this is an aesthetic that will benefit from things like the effect that Gucci is having on fashion because suddenly it won't feel so much like you have to be a Missoni person to wear Missoni. Actually, you could mix this in with a load of
Easily.
Gucci stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
true.
Easily.
I think it will have a.
There are some brilliant pieces in there.
I think the emerging talent, which we were talking about as we came up the stairs here, it's really unusual. As somebody, I used to work at the British Fashion Council and we were all about emerging talent. And how amazing now that people are looking to Milan for that and that Milan can offer something more than the big brands. And obviously in the season that there was Franca Zani's funeral, I think it's fantastic that her legacy that because she founded an initiative with Vogue Italia. I think it's just brilliant that that's really started to bed down.
Yeah.
It's not yet at the London new gen levels, but there
Who's
are green
next?
shoots.
The
and
Who's Next thing.
Who's
Who's next?
Who's
It's called Who's Next.
Oh, I see. I think you're like, who's next? I'm like,
No,
I don't
it's
know.
called
There's
Who's
another panel this afternoon.
Sorry, scary.
I get it. Yeah, who's next? Yes.
Yeah.
And who is next? How great to be able to go to Milan with that intention.
I just think it's great that Milan feels exciting and it feels like it's offering a fashion proposition. Like before you go to Milan and it was very much about admiring these great brands that always did what those great brands did.
Exactly.
So it was kind of like you couldn't really even criticize it. It was like you go and X does X, X does X. Whereas now you go and you feel like it's really part of the fashion conversation. That's really exciting. It gives you loads of ideas and I feel like other people are following. Totally.
Except probably Armani, and now I'm going to be in trouble.
Yeah, well,
It's
that's
not really moving forward, is it?
No.
But it's still big and successful.
Yeah, I just think of Armani, it's not fashion, it's a brand. It's like
Yeah.
Coca-Cola.
Yeah, but the
It's a
money
house.
they've been making for
Yeah.
40 years, so there must be something working there. I think Armani is a phenomenon to discuss because we always say that we don't even discuss it. It's what, 7, 8, 9 billion brand? Biggest in the world?
They're dressing most of the red carpet at the Oscars.
They're
the night
dressing
before
most
their
of the red
show.
carpet
And
still.
they
So
make
the
those
name
women
is
look
still.
amazing.
They
do,
truly.
They do consistently make those women look amazing.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
Yeah.
why they're the go-to.
And yet you see the show and we don't even discuss it. Why?
Do you like it though?
No. But that's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say, and yet is
I think
hugely
it's
successful.
It's just moved beyond fashion into being like a
Super
perfume,
brand,
super
yeah.
brand. It's just kind of like
Oh no, they sell fashion a lot.
Be interesting to
sell
see
a
when
lot
he
of
steps
clothes.
down who
it's
goes
not-
there.
I don't know. It doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like it's about design. It feels like it's really about product. It's
I
about
completely
like a
agree with
perfume
you.
Or it used to be. I mean, look at like particularly in terms of menswear, he's contributed so much, and I think totally deserves a huge amount of respect. But I don't think this is about.
But they dress half of the red carpet. It means that those women
that's
still
money
want to
because
be
they-
in Armani.
No, because those women are fronting perfume campaigns for them and what have you.
Yeah, but there's also a lot of people who buy that. I did
No,
actually once get a chance to
not
go to
true.
the Privé show atelier. What do you call it? The salon where people go, and I was laughing to myself. If I say to you, it was like Zara on the day that the stock had dropped. I'm not really exaggerating.
Really?
And you know, this was a kind of privileged access thing. There were no press there because I was actually with someone who was going to buy. My mouth was hanging open. I couldn't believe it. There were people literally pulling jackets off, and these were people who were buying couture.
I tell you, it's Armani is still very powerful.
It is very powerful, and I think people love that, you know, as a brand as well, like we were talking about before. I think it does have a lot of gravitas with lots of people who think that they appreciate fashion in a non-sort of cynical way, like we sort of think maybe it's not that cool, but they still think they're buying into the biggest brand that exists, which is the House of Armani. So I think, it, like, you know, a lot of it comes down to that, especially in different countries, you know, in America, for example, you know, coming down to the Oscars. You know, Armani is, you know, the most chic kind of, you know, that real sort of pivotal point of chic Italian fashion.
Chic, is it?
Tell
me,
depends where you want to wear it, Mimma, I guess.
I know, but I'm the one who brought it up because I always say respect. I mean, the guy is still standing and he's still the richest one and he's still private. No shareholder, no, I mean, and then we all say,
But people choose to wear a beautiful gown, not a royal blue velvet.
Yeah, probably. Well, but probably he sells some royal blue velvet jackets
sure he does.
to make that much money.
Think how interesting it's going to be though to watch Armani develop, because he's not going to stay there that much
That's
longer.
what I was saying. To see if they do it, you know, do they do like a Celine or do they do, you know, does it turn into like a Jill Sander, for
What
example?
will it be?
What will it be? I think it's going to be amazing.
I think he wants it to end with him.
Maybe.
There is no legacy.
People are saying he's not building any legacy. His top executives are leaving because they don't know if it will still exist. It has two heirs who are going to be multi-billionaires. I think in his mind it's after me,
but you can't close something that big.
No.
You just can't. They'll have to.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea.
I think he'll
be a different entity.
Because, you know, everyone's always like Karl Lagerfeld will become a hologram. Armani will become a hologram.
Definitely.
It will probably become a completely public, you know, you can put it out public, stock exchange, 100%. Like Gucci did before the
It's a mega
Pinot.
brand, of course. But it's what puzzles me and what I often think about in those shows for somebody who, and you know, this is the creative capacity of anybody, even if you're a genius, but you know, he reinvented fashion. Reinvented
At the
it.
time where he started, essential what he did.
He was a complete revolutionary. He absolutely changed everything. And there are very few designers who really do that.
But that's why he's so rich today. I mean, he did something amazing.
But also that's why he
Completely set the
doesn't give a
agenda.
shit anymore. He's like, I've already done something. He doesn't need to do something new each
But
season.
it's still curious, I guess, to your point, it's still curious that it just keeps coming out.
The
the
weird
same
thing
why
is,
he's happy
the
with
girls
that.
aren't even, you know, like,
No,
the
the
model,
casting is,
I just don't even recognise any of the models.
No.
It just exists. in
When
its
you do
own-
recognise one of the girls, think, oh, that's good.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
They don't want to. I
It's
don't
just a
think they
different-
don't want to walk for him anymore.
No,
I don't think it's that.
No,
I don't
they
think
just
it's
don't
that.
want
I
us.
think
He
it's
just
his.
doesn't want them.
He doesn't want to be.
I don't think it's cast in the
all
same
about
way
him.
that the
It's
other
him,
shows
exactly.
are.
It's not Gigi, it's me.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not even about the Gigi Hadid.
No, but I
just
mean
the
anyway.
girls of this. You know, you see these girls who walk in a lot of the shows and they look really fresh and beautiful, and then you go to a Armani show and you're like, who the fuck are these
Oh, but I think
people?
he
It
even
is
has a hand in
interesting.
doing the makeup. I mean, I've
Yeah.
heard he actually goes around and fixes the makeup himself.
Wow.
I mean, he's a complete detail control freak. So
It's fascinating.
It is fascinating.
I would love if I could like profile any designer but get access to them for like a week. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
The world and how he lives his life. And I love, you know, the fake clapping thing that they do,
It's
where they plant people
fascinating.
in the audience to clap, as
clap,
the show's
yeah.
going on. It's so weird.
Oh, do they do that?
how
Yeah.
do you know that?
Because you're there, and like, have you ever been to a fashion show where halfway through a show people start
No.
clapping? So at an Armani show, like,
At a beautiful look.
yeah, like four.
yeah.
He often does the thing where he'll send 4 girls out at once, and then someone's like, and all these people start clapping, and it's like, what is happening? It's
Oh,
so
no, I've
weird.
It's very
I've
Italian.
been sat beside one at one stage, and it just like jumped out of my
So
skin.
weird, and they keep going until other people join in. So like the clients join in, and people get uncomfortable. So people are joining in less and less. But like, it's so weird. It's just like. Anyway, so we're saying it was a strong Milan. It was a strong season. We're happy to see people like Missoni making a message, but we're also happy to see nice bags, good clothes at Gucci. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, a strong season. How great to be able to have a debate about Milan.
I know.
Which just wouldn't have happened 2
Wouldn't
years
have happened
ago.
before. Well, should we give all the designers a big... Sorry, were you going to say something? I just cut you off. No. Give us your gem, your closing
No,
note.
I think it's just, it's a tough world out there. It's tough for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think you could see a lot of brands really rise to the occasion and do what they do really well.
Really well.
It was a fantastic Max Mara show, it was a
Totally.
fantastic Prada show, it was a fantastic Gucci show, each in their own, playing
right,
to their own
yeah.
strengths, and it was a fantastic Missoni show. But you don't have to buy into the whole look, but to actually see them do their job incredibly well.
really well.
This is great.
No, it is.
I'm just sorry we haven't discussed, and I think we don't have time, Pucci by Lotta Volkova.
Yeah, what did you think of that show?
Well, I have nothing against Lotta, but designers should be designers and not thinking that hiring Lotta, then they succeed, because then we've got one show in London, one show in Milan, and two in Paris looking the same. That's what I think.
Who's that? Sorry, I don't know.
Who styled,
Lotta
styled
yes.
Massimo
Yeah.
show,
Massimo
and it
Giorgetti.
looks
Yeah.
like
It does look very
Burberry styled by
Balenciaga.
Lotta, and it's looks but
I quite liked it though. The soundtrack was amazing. It's that weird, what's he called? He's like a he does like spoken word and voiceovers, and he recorded this like freaky album about the colours, where he just talks about colours, and that was
Every
it.
morning.
What do we think of the fringed hat?
Paula was just asking if she could order one.
I can read that.
Morning. Close.
I cannot wait to see someone try and wear that to the show.
it's certainly
Somebody
going to
will.
sell out like crazy. I mean,
That hat is going to sell out.
That's not going to
I'm
That won't even go into
totally
production.
ironical.
Okay, phew.
ironical. That's really cute.
It's like a cousin.
The colour palette.
I didn't dislike the show, and I'm not just throwing names, but I had dinner with Laudomia Pucci the other week because we're friends, and she was here, and I told her, and she said, no, he has his point of view, this is working, never been more successful. I'm like, maybe I'm wrong, but I just think that people shouldn't become the stylist of the moment. They should keep their brands what it is. But let's see what happens.
Well, it's interesting that you brought that up after what Paula was just saying, which is how it was a season in Milan where everyone else seemed to go back to what they did best, and then this was embracing what someone else does best, which is quite interesting.
Exactly.
It's quite interesting that Lotta also doesn't change her, aesthetic, because actually so many stylists also do. It's if you're doing
It's
Gucci,
her
you do it
brand.
one way. If you're doing Balenciaga, you do it another way. You do Mulberry, you do it in another way. But actually, she did sort of keep her
Exactly.
aesthetic across the same, which is, probably credit to her.
Credit
but
to
maybe
her.
not
Oh,
necessarily.
I credit to her at all, completely.
Yeah.
No, it's amazing level of confidence.
It's interesting though, this kind of styling, I think, for Gucci, you can still see the individual garments beneath the styling, and for me, I find it quite hard to dissect.
Well, it's about look, isn't it? It's look by look by look, and it's really head to toe. Actually, I kind of liked it.
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't just.
The hats were somewhat strange.
I loved the carpet.
Susie Menkes was quite disparaging
carpet
and
was
said she
amazing.
thought that Pucci needed to probably give it a rest for a season.
Ooh. I just thought
No, I
those
didn't
hats.
read
I
them.
couldn't stop laughing because it was kind of this. It was the season of like the poor model, and like Gucci.
Yeah,
And
totally.
you can't see.
Dan Thorley turned to me and was like, "Imagine if like, that was your daughter."
Yeah.
They were like, "Mum, I've been cast with Gucci." And
Where
then
are
they
you?
came out.
Well, it's like the rhinestones at Gucci.
But I always think, do they hire like
probably pay
a
those.
fit model or something to do that? Because it would be so cruel to hire someone and then
Like, this is your look, the gimp mask. Zip on back.
it's
Thanks.
awful. Anyway,
just
on
put this
that,
bag over
on
your
that
head.
light note, should we give all the designers a round of applause for giving us so much?